Hey everyone, it's Matt, and today I will be reading to you another SCP entry. This one is SCP-6370, and I will warn you ahead of time, it is a bit dark and disturbing, so if that is not your style, you might want to choose a different one, but otherwise, I do hope you'll enjoy it. Here we go. Item number SCP-6370, Level 4 Secret, Containment Class Pending. Special Containment Procedures. Investigations into SCP-6370 are ongoing. The mechanism through which entry to SCP-6370 is gained is currently unknown, hindering research. Footage from researcher Brandis's surveillance is currently under analysis. Stills of individuals encountered by Brandis are in the process of being compared to missing persons records. Description: SCP-6370 is an extradimensional spatial anomaly. The interior dimensions of the anomaly are as of yet unknown, but are seemingly limitless. The interior is characterized by an arid desert environment through which runs a highway road. Based on recovered footage, there are a number of structures and inhabitants within SCP-6370. At least one inhabitant is currently believed to be native to the space. It is hypothesized that SCP-6370 has anomalous spatial and temporal properties, and that those within it experience impairment of their cognitive abilities as a potential result of this. Discovery. On the morning of August 13th, 2021, Foundation researcher Jeffrey Brandis departed Site-19 after a night shift. Upon finishing their shift, Brandis neglected to turn off and remove from his attire the mandatory recording equipment worn during conducted testing. At some point on the journey to his civilian residence, Brandis entered SCP-6370. Begin footage. Brandis leaves his personal laboratory, gathers his belongings, and walks to the nearest site checkout gate. He engages in conversation with the guard on duty, Franklin Perez. Have a good weekend, Frank. Thanks, Jeff. You too. Are you and Lisa up to anything? I don't think so. We'll just have a quiet one. See you Monday. Brandis walks to Vehicle Bay West 3A and enters his civilian vehicle. He exits the site. The recording equipment situated on Brandis's coat captures the journey from his vantage point. The surrounding environment begins to exhibit minor deviations from baseline. Tree lines grow sparser, the ground drier. 21 minutes into the journey, the footage undergoes a sudden degradation in quality. The sound of static is briefly heard. Brandis enters SCP-6370. A structure comes into view on the horizon. As Brandis drives closer, the building becomes identifiable as a diner. He mumbles to himself, "Starving." He signals to pull over and drives into the diner's parking lot. As he does, the camera captures a seemingly humanoid entity covered in a dark red liquid, crouched near the far side of the building. It faces away from the camera and is non-identifiable. Brandis does not appear to see the entity. If he does not react. The car stops and Brandis steps out, foregoing locking the vehicle. He surveys the landscape. No distinguishing features can be seen. Sand, hills, and the highway stretch out before him. He takes his cellular phone out of his pocket and attempts to make a series of phone calls, none of which connect. Abandoning his efforts, he begins to walk around to the front of the building. An unidentified elderly man comes into the camera's frame, walking down the highway in the opposite direction to Brandis. His disheveled gray suit jacket flaps in the wind, while his feet are bare and bleeding. Brandis runs over to him. Hey, you. With his back to the diner, Brandis places a hand on the man's shoulder. He stops and turns towards Brandis, but does not make eye contact. I'm not sure I'm meant to be here. I need to get back to wherever I came from. Do you know the way? The man says something indiscernible. Can you speak up? I can't keep moving. You gotta keep moving. The man continues to mumble the phrase as Brandis responds. Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Do you know where we are? The man does not respond. Do you know where we are? The man looks up, still avoiding eye contact. He begins to stare over Brandis' shoulder. His eyes widen, and his breath quickens. The man turns and begins to run down the highway, leaving bloody footprints in his wake. Brandis watches silently before turning back to the diner. A bell rings as Brandis opens the diner door. It appears to be empty. Hello? A female voice calls out from the back. 1 minute. The diner is in an unkempt state. The red leather seat covers are frayed and torn, and wood paneling pulls away from the walls. In the center of the room, a counter in a U-shape divides the space between the seating area and an area for drink preparation. Food display units are situated on top of the counter. They are turned on, but empty. A large amount of mold grows in the back of one. Take a seat. I'll be with you shortly. Brandis situates himself in a seating booth facing inwards to the diner, away from the highway. At the end of the row of booths, another patron is now visible. A large, bald man sits in the far corner, facing away from Brandis. The source of the unidentified voice becomes apparent. A server enters the room via a door next to the booth the patron is sat in. She carries a tray of food coming from the kitchen. As the door closes, flies follow her into the room. Brandis pulls out his phone and, on seeing the lack of signal, begins to toggle airplane mode on and off. The server leans over the counter to Nice to meet you. How's your day going? Okay, thanks. Well, here's our menu. Can I get you... Brandis looks up from his phone, making eye contact with the server. She pauses and stares at him. Pinned to her uniform is a name tag, degraded to the point of illegibility. I'm sorry, are you okay? A loud snorting sound is heard. Yes, I'm fine. Do we know each other? No. No, I don't think we do. Another loud snorting sound. Brandis turns from the server, looking down the row of booths. At the end, the patron is shoveling food into his mouth with his hands at pace. The speed of consumption impinges his breathing, resulting in him respiring heavily through his nose. The server steps back from the table. Can I get you some coffee to start? That would be lovely, thank you. A crunch reverberates throughout the diner. Brandis turns to look at the patron, who throws a glance over their shoulder. Their eyes are covered by black sunglasses. They quickly resume consumption. What brings you out here anyway? The sound of chewing begins to be heard constantly, but quietly. I'm just trying to get home. Aren't we all? The sound of chewing grows in volume. The server returns to Brandis's booth. Her face is flushed and moist. Have you had a chance to look at the menu? Yeah, I was thinking the waffles with, I'm sorry, we don't have the waffles at the moment. Leaning over the table, the server's hand shakes as she pours the coffee. A drop of sweat falls from her forehead and lands in the cup. The chewing sounds grow increasingly louder. Okay, how about the eggs over easy? Sorry, out of that too. Brandis raises their voice to be heard over the chewing noises. Pancakes? Nope. What do you have then? The server's lips move, but the sound of chewing has grown to a volume where the words spoken cannot be discerned. She pauses for a minute, then continues. Due to the camera angle, it is unclear if Brandis is speaking too. The volume of the chewing noises has increased to the point of distortion. Blood begins to seep from the server's ears. She mutters a single syllable at Brandis. Brandis jumps from the booth and sprints out of the diner. As soon as the door closes behind him, the chewing noises cease. All that can then be heard is Brandis's labored breathing. His car is absent from the parking lot. He begins to walk along the highway, but turns to look at the diner before leaving. The server stares at him through the window, a tear rolling down her cheek. Brandis turns back to the highway and continues walking. 43 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis continues to walk down the highway. There have been no distinguishing landmarks or features so far. A young man appears on the horizon, walking towards Brandis. Brandis runs to him. Hey you. Whoa, stay back. As Brandis approaches, the man darts backwards off the road. His dress shoes throw up sand against his gray suit, soiling it. I just wanted to know where we are. I'm trying to get home. The man stops moving and stands in place. Have we met before? No, I don't think so. Okay, guessing you must be new here then. The man resumes walking. I'm sorry, but you can have this advice for free. Try and fight through the fog, but above all, keep moving. You hear me? You gotta keep moving. Why? With the distance between them growing, the man raises his voice to be heard. The ogre. Don't let the ogre catch you. Brandis resumes walking. 1 hour and 12 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. A large building appears ahead of Brandis, nestled behind a hill. 19 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis approaches the windowless building. A parking lot stretches out, leading to the entrance. The automatic doors open. Brandis enters. Lights flicker on the ceiling above him. The interior resembles a supermarket, but the shelves are empty. On some, empty containers and packets are scattered. Brandis wanders through the supermarket aisles. The shelves are high, restricting the dim shine of the lights above. There is a noise. Brandis turns around. A box rests in the center of the aisle, dislodged from the shelf it previously rested on. Hello? Brandis walks to the end of the aisle and looks around the corner. A door set in the far wall slams shut. He attempts to open it, but it is locked. Brandis carries on, searching the building. 34 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis has been exploring the building, going from aisle to aisle, without discovery. The building appears to be larger on the inside than it appeared from the outside. As he reaches the end of an aisle, he sees a customer service desk in the distance. A woman stands behind it. Good morning, sir. Can I help you today? Regretfully, we're out of stock of most items at the moment. That's okay. I'm just looking for a way out of here. The way out? It's just along the aisles, the same way you came in. No, not out of here, out of... Brandis clutches his forehead. Out of here, out of this place. I need to get home. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's no going home. A brief jingle plays over the building's tannoy system. This is followed by the commencement of chewing noises. The store is closing, sir. I must ask you to leave. The woman glances over Brandis' shoulder. The lights flicker. What do you mean by that? Sir, please. A shuffling noise is heard behind Brandis. Why can't I go home? A figure shuffles into frame and walks behind the desk. They situate themselves directly behind the woman. It is the patron from the diner. Hey, sorry, we're having a conversation. Up close, the features of the patron are more discernible. Its skin is gray and mottled, and what earlier appeared to be a nose is in fact crude makeup drawn on a flat surface. Despite this, it lends towards the woman and proceeds to emit a series of sounds similar to sniffing. The woman stares directly forward. The patron opens its mouth. A long gray tongue falls out. It lands on the woman's shoulder and licks all the way up to her ear before it retracts back into its mouth. With a grunting noise, the patron opens its mouth and bites down with force on the woman's upper trapezius muscle. Once its teeth are embedded, it does not release its bite. Run! The patron jerks its head upwards, pulling back layers of muscle and tendon. Blood sprays from ruptured vessels, covering Brandis in a red mist. Run! Brandis turns and begins to sprint, but slips in the blood. He hits the floor as blood continues to splatter over him. The lights begin to flicker rapidly. He stands and staggers forward, breaking into a run. 16 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. After running past a vast number of aisles, Brandis returns to the building's entrance. As the doors begin to automatically open, he forces his body through the gap between them and continues to sprint. The sky is dark red. He moves through the parking lot and back onto the highway. 58 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis, still running down the highway, trips and falls. He grazes his leg on the tarmac, but quickly stands and resumes moving. 3 hours and 38 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. For the first time since returning to the highway, Brandis turns around. Several meters behind him, the diner patron stands, motionless, in the middle of the road. He resumes moving. 7 hours and 22 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis slows his run, leans forward, and vomits. Afterwards, he resumes moving. 15 hours and 41 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. A building appears on the horizon. 55 minutes of extraneous footage redacted. Brandis approaches the building and slumps down against the wall next to a door. Still covered in the woman's blood, he begins to hyperventilate. I can't make sense. Running his hands down his torso, Brandis notices the surveillance camera. He angles it to point toward his face. If this is transmitting, found myself in here. Time, distance, both seem wrong. Cognition is dulled, hazy. Can't remember where I've been, where I'm going. Tell Lisa, time, distance, both seem wrong. I found myself in this space, unsure. The door Brandis is slumped by flies open and a figure emerges. No. The patron lurches forward and grabs Brandis by his coat lapels. As it does, its black sunglasses fall off its face. Behind them, two small bird-like eyes are nestled within rolls of flesh. The surface of the eyes is completely black. Brandis grasps onto the doorframe as the patron pulls him into the building. His grasp falters and he is dragged through, falling through fly-filled air onto a tiled floor. The patron leans in over Brandis and begins to emit sniffing noises. Viscous pus drips from the skin folds of its neck, landing on Brandis's chest. Brandis raises his hands, attempting to push the patron away. The patron opens its mouth. Its teeth are square, appearing too large for the mouth in which they reside. Its gray, ulcered tongue rests between the bottom set. Brandis screams as the patron bites down on his left hand. Half his ring finger and the entirety of his middle and index fingers are avulsed. The patron begins to chew. It turns around and emits a low, guttural squealing sound, spraying half-chewed flesh as it does. A woman walks into frame. The server. Help. Help me. The server moves to approach Brandis, but is met by another vocalization from the patron. It turns to her and gnashes its teeth, lurching its head in her direction. Okay, okay. Brandis moans as the server backs away. He rolls on the ground. A dragging sound is heard. Brandis steadies his movement and props himself up on his right elbow. His left hand bleeds continually. From this vantage point, cupboards, a stove, and worktop counters can be seen. The server pulls a meat grinder along the ladder towards Brandis and the patron. Brandis attempts to move. The patron jumps on top of him, pinning him in place. The view from the camera is obscured. Screaming can be heard. 2 minutes later, the patron draws back, pulling away from Brandis's face. Large scraps of skin and flesh hang out of a blood-soaked mouth. Brandis does not move. The server stands by the grinder, quietly crying. The patron rests its left hand on Brandis's stomach and begins to repeatedly pull his right leg. Tearing sounds are heard, followed by a popping as the femur dislocates from the hip bone. Opening its mouth and unfurling its tongue, the patron holds aloft the severed leg. The tongue descends into the center of the femur bone and undulates, dislodging the bone marrow within. The offal is lifted into the patron's mouth. The tongue descends into the bone again. As it does, an ulcer pops, spraying a yellow liquid outwards. Empty of marrow, the leg is discarded. The patron's tongue licks its face, gathering the blood and smearing the drawn-on nose. The patron turns and walks out of shot. A door is heard opening, then closing. kitchen knife, the server walks up to the leg, picks it up, and carries it to the meat grinder. She begins to slice chunks of flesh into the machine's inlet. A bell is heard. The server drops the remnants of the leg on the floor. As a voice calls out from off-screen, the server turns the grinder's crank. 1 minute. As the crank turns, the meat is ground to mince, falling unceremoniously onto a waiting plate. Take a seat. I'll be with you shortly. The server wipes her eyes before inhaling deeply. She picks up the plate and walks off screen. A door is heard opening, then closing. Welcome. It's nice to meet you. How's your day going? Footage ceases transmission. And that does it for this SCP entry. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll sleep well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.